Alright, me. It is late January, and I've just gotten myself together enough to read another Wizard of Oz book. This one being The Scarecrow of Oz, which is slightly strangely named, right? Mostly because the Scarecrow doesn't appear for like the first 13 chapters or something, right? It's another Oz story, right? But it's not as clearly defined, because we are following, right? Instead of it being this girl enters into the world and then meets all these characters and has to overcome, and everyone works together, right? It is we don't necessarily meet a whole lot of new people or things that end up traveling with them, right? It is very much a, hey, here is the girl Trot, and here is Captain Bill. They meet and are in this kind of distant land of Oz, in a very strange place in Oz, right? And within the lore of the continuous lore of these the books, right? It's like the South, which is Quadling country as established in the early books, is like just this place where like anything goes, because there's all these different tiny little kingdoms, and so like that's just where everything happens, right? And so we're back in Quadling country again. But yeah, and then it's just very like, oh yeah, the Scarecrow doesn't come in until like 12, 13 chapters in. Very strange indeed. But yeah, you know, when I had first decided to get these books and like actually read The Wizard of Oz, it was very much like an, oh yeah, this is The Wizard of Oz. I know that there's more books, and I know that there's a thing of the Return to Oz from the 1980s or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I get it. I did not expect this to be like the reading of the Judgment of Paris, right? For those uninitiated with Greek mythology, right? The Trojan War stems from the Judgment of Paris, which like in of itself is this like very, very quick kind of like start to some of that feels very important with the Greek mythology. The weird thing is though, is that like 80 to 90% of the Greek mythology that we of the ancient Greek mythology that we know of and have recorded stories of, like, can trace directly back to the story of the Judgment of Paris and like involvement in the Trojan War and things. And like, so like you start with this very, very basic, simple story, and then it just devolves into this mess, all right? And this is very much the same thing of where it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of a thing that we're all vaguely familiar with, and it is devolved into this mess of things, right? Because the characters that we follow in this, in Captain Bill and Trot, Captain Bill, I believe, was in one of the very early books, but then Trot and Captain Bill also have their own series and are like, have like 2 or 3 books that are just them exploring other places, and then they get introduced into the Wizard of Oz and the Ozland and Fairyland, and it's like, what? why do this? Why do this? You know, it's just a very, very strange, like, but it's also just like this mounting of just every single story is going to be the same. We're going to constantly introduce new characters into this, but then also not, and force you to then interact again with the same characters over and over and over again, but not actually expand any of the characters. It's a very strange series that I'm fighting my way through. It also has incredibly strange pacing, right? You know, like I said, the Scarecrow, who is the titular character in this, doesn't appear for like the first 12 or 13 chapters. The big triumphant ending, right? The climactic piece of this, of like defeating the evil king, it gets the same amount of it gets like the same amount of pages and story beat as the preparations for the banquet at the end, right? Of the celebrations and the resolutions, right? And so like it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's just a very strange piece. And these books are getting stranger and stranger to just read. But yeah. It's also very strange that, like, because this is a continuous thing that's been happening throughout the Oz books, but like it's an introduction of some characters and some places within the fairyland of Oz, and then just kind of dropping them at the end of the story, right? But usually, like, we have some characters that stick around and are in some way important or get introduced into this big, larger family of characters and things, right? But this is the first one I would say that, like, the Oz characters that we meet, right, have like no effect on anything else, right? And will probably not have any effect on anything else, right? And I suspect the Patchwork Girl of Oz will also end up having the same thing, of where the few characters that we met that are Ozian characters are going to mean absolutely nothing in that book. But this one is very clearly like the you know, characters that they win and helped just because they were around in the Gardener Pawn and in Princess Gloria, didn't even say goodbye to them. Right? That's how little they meant. They mean to everything else, right? This is a book that is very much to satisfy what has been noted in a couple different letters that have been placed at the beginning of the books, that like it is L. Frank Baum writing to make the people that are reading his stories and follow their requests, and very popular requests. And this very much just reads into I just need to write something to get Trot and to get Captain Bill into the land of Oz. And that's what this is, right? Yeah. There's not, you know, it's also very strange that, like, right, we keep going back to this well of very distinctly has stated before of L. Frank Baum that his intentions and goals were to write children's literature that did not involve romance and did not involve marriage and things like that. But that is like the plot point throughout this entire story, right? Very strange, because that's the massive focus is on. Yeah. There's one moralistic teaching in here that's a throwaway line, but that is I don't even remember what the context of it was. I think it was they're trying to get the evil king to surrender, and it's either the Scarecrow or Pawn makes has the thought that only cowards are cruel, right? And so, you know, the king is just known for being cruel. His name is Cruel, but it's Krewl. I can't believe Donkey Kong stole from The Wizard of Oz. Shout out to K. Rool. But yeah, it's just you know, you could take that as a moralistic teaching about cruelness and cowardice and things like that. You can look into a lot of colonial things, as you always can with these books, right? You can also look into Glinda, who is really the actual power within all of Oz, is okay with cruelty as long as it's not directly affecting her, right? Right, because she has this magic book that tells her everything that's going on everywhere. And she knows that for a fact that there is this cruelness and destructiveness that is occurring in this faraway land or part of her country within Oz, right? It's just a little bit out of the way, and does nothing to does not care about it, does nothing to stop it until someone enters that might then be upset and have a bad first impression about Oz. And so as long as the citizens are unhappy, that's fine. But as soon as someone that's might then go and tell, that's a problem, and suddenly good old King K. Rool needs to be removed, and the rightful princess needs to be reinstated. So yeah, that's Scarecrow of Oz. We're almost done, but it feels so far away.